One thing you can say about the classic Doom games, you'll never be short of ways to experience them, whether on consoles in the 1990s or modern remasters that polish and add quality of life improvements. id Software has done a remarkable job of keeping Doom alive and playable for modern audiences. But it's not just Doom. In recent years there's been an avalanche of remasters, remakes and re-releases, including Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, Rise of the Triad, Turok, Dark Forces, Chex Quest, Quake, and even Strife. How on earth did Strife get a remaster? It's one of the most obscure games. This is amazing both for preserving games, but also bringing their experiences into this new era. New audiences can learn and appreciate why these games are important, while old players can re-experience a slice of their gaming past, without having to deal with compatibility issues and glitches that come along with trying to run old executables on modern Windows. But there's one series missing from that list that sticks out to me, and it always has done. Where is Raven Software's Heretic Hexen series? For those who don't know, 4 games make up the Heretic Hexen series. Heretic released in late 1994, Hexen released in 1995, Hexen 2 released in 1997, and Heretic 2 released in 1998. The series evolved from a medieval Doom clone to become a unique experience in its own right, so much so that Hexen saw releases on both Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 back in the day. Yet despite this, the series has never really been given any real love or attention outside of those initial releases. These games have not been re-released to modern consoles, they haven't been remastered for PC, and some of the games, I'm looking at you Heretic 2, are unobtainable outside of dumpster diving abandonware websites. If the series was not great, this might be understandable, but all of these games are fun and exciting to play. All of them stand shoulder to shoulder with their peers released around this time, so much so that Raven was bought out in 1997 because of their success. So why are these games not considered for remaster treatment? The biggest reason we haven't seen any kind of remaster for Heretic or Hexen is arguably because the rights for the Heretic series have been in a weird grey area for so long, so much so that id published the original Heretic game when it released in 1995. In 1997, Activision purchased Raven Software for $12 million, and that kind of started things on the long road to confusion. Raven would still develop games based off id properties throughout the 2000s, including Quake 4 and 2009's Wolfenstein, but this abruptly ended when id was purchased by Bethesda in 2009. After this, Raven became more of an in-house Call of Duty developer for Activision, while Bethesda were more interested in developing their own IPs with their own internal studios. This is why Raven Software had absolutely nothing to do with the next Wolfenstein game. id Software retained the publishing rights to the Heretic series, but Raven had the right to the series itself, and you can probably work out that neither party was really all that interested in settling the future of the series. At the present time, you can buy Heretic, Hexen and Hexen 2 via Steam, but these are not great experiences at all. They run through DOSBox and are far from optimal on modern platforms. But here's the funny thing, time heals all wounds in the gaming industry, and it's more likely in 2024 that we'll see some kind of revival for the series. Microsoft purchasing both Bethesda and Activision has brought all parties under the same umbrella, so that huge grey area we were talking about earlier should theoretically have disappeared. But that alone doesn't guarantee a remaster or remake. The Doom community at large seems very indifferent to Heretic and Hexen. Searching on Google reveals that the question of a remaster isn't new. Usually it's shouted down by fans who don't see the value in making the games more accessible or bringing them back from the past. This is to be expected. Heretic wears its Doom inspiration on its sleeve, while Hexen and Hexen 2 arguably take that familiar gameplay loop and put it in a very different experience. And of course, not every game should be remastered. Heretic and Hexen are certainly not on everyone's lists of favourite games ever, but here's the thing, they were important to that mid-1990s FPS boom period. Heretic was an evolution of the Doom engine and was the next evolutionary step after Doom 2. It introduces new features like wind mechanics that affect projectile weapons. It has secondary fire on most of its weapons, making even the pistol equivalent weapon usable late in the game. The introduction of usable items whenever the player wants means that encounters are much more intense in this game. Players can play to their style and create their own way of getting through levels. I'd also, somewhat controversially, say that some of its better levels run rings around some of Doom 2's levels. Sure, there are issues with Heretic, some of the music can get overused, and the art style is very samey once you reach the third episode. But then again, I'd argue some of the levels are much more difficult than what you'd find in Doom. As for the Hexen games, I don't have all that much experience with them, but the ideas they introduce are so different from what Doom offered and showcased a different way of constructing FPS games. They introduced ideas like hub worlds and player classes, offering flexibility on how people wanted to play the game even more than Heretic. Even Heretic 2, which abandons the FPS genre, has found itself being praised in recent years by YouTubers as an ambitious and fun RPG that expands the Heretic lore. And it's not like there's a complete unwillingness to make this happen. Phil Spencer, head of Xbox Gaming, has stated on more than one occasion that he is a huge fan of Raven Software's early games, including Heretic and Hexen. He even wore a shirt with the Hexen box art on it back in 2022. And his comments on various podcasts when asked about bringing back old series seems to indicate that he is very willing to let studios go in and remaster these games should the opportunity arise. Even staff from within Night Dive Studios, the studio responsible for most of those remasters I was talking about earlier, have thrown their hat publicly into the ring to try and make this happen. There's a clear body of gamers who fondly remember these games, and I'd argue potentially many more who would fall in love with what the series has to offer should an official remaster be made. And to those people who say that these games are too fiddly, or they're relics of their time and should be left behind, well-made remasters can breathe new life into games and series that have gained unfair negative reputations, and also help people to appreciate how good the games were. Take the original Tomb Raider games. They had long since been left in the past by Crystal Dynamics. Playing the older PC Tomb Raider games was miserable because they lacked quality of life improvements. Sure, there were re-releases in the years, but they were as bare bones as you could get, and since the new developers had gone in a different direction completely, there was little interest in making these experiences better. For the longest time, a lot of modern gamers had the impression that the original Tomb Raider games were just not fun, and in some cases, just awful. Yet when they released the remaster of the first 3 Tomb Raider games, they were critically applauded and sold higher than expected. Fans who had not been able to access these games were finally able to enjoy the series' origins and appreciate why these games were special to fans who had been waiting years for this kind of remaster. And it wasn't just PC gamers, it was across all modern consoles. When the Doom 1 and Doom 2 bundle released earlier this year, it brought together all the best parts of classic Doom. This made it so much easier for newcomers to the series to come in and experience what the game had to offer. These points of entry are so important to keeping these games relevant and to helping people understand why they were important in the first place, which is why official remasters matter. At this point, I think it's kind of inevitable that we will see some kind of remaster in the future for Heretic and maybe even the Hexen games. At the end of the day, I think it definitely needs to happen. It's one of those series that's vastly underappreciated, largely forgotten by time, and would greatly benefit from a modern point of entry that brings in quality of life improvements to make the overall package just that much more accessible for modern gaming. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Would you like to see the Hexen and Heretic games get remasters? Would you like to finally see Heretic 2 get a digital re-release? Or are you just not a fan of the series at all and you think it's best left in the past? Let me know in the comments what you think, and thank you so much for watching.